Hi guys, ZCrazyG here, back with another video. So, the Crash Bandicoot fanbase is kinda hanging on the edge since we're all expecting and anticipating the reveal of a brand new Crash Bandicoot game some point soon. Not that one. There have been plenty of supposed rumours and leaks that suggest it's likely that something is in the pipeline, and it's something that Crash fans have wanted more than anything. But is that all that lies in store for Crash's future? This brings me on to what seems to be an ongoing debate in the community, whether or not we should see any more remakes alongside new games. People seem to have quite strong opinions on this. Even I shared my views in a video I made last year. There I basically summarised that I would rather they focus their efforts on bringing new titles to the Crash franchise and why I wouldn't want to see the other games remade. But in this video I want to expand upon this. I want to take you through the games in the series that have yet to be remade and give not only my own thoughts on the concept of remaking them, but mainly why these games are probably not likely to be remade, taking into account the feasibility of remaking it, the popularity and demand, as opposed to my personal opinion. Now, to preface all of this, I think it should be noted that Activision themselves have stated that their focus with not only Crash but also Spyro will be new material. This was stated in one of their more recent shareholder calls. Canadian Guy A actually did a breakdown on the specifics of this in a video of his, so I'll link that down below. So let's get on to the main point of this video, why each of the other Crash games should or should not be remade and why they most likely won't. Now, this isn't to say that they won't ever be remade at some point in the future, I'm just stating why I think it's the most likely scenario that they won't be, at least to me. So let's begin with our first game. I won't lie, I honestly don't know where all of this sudden love for Crash Bash came from. I don't know if it was just me, but I always saw it that the fan base didn't really care or think that much of Crash Bash. But now all of a sudden, someone seems to have pulled an Uno reverse card and 180'd everyone's opinion. At least that's just how it seems to me. I guess people just always felt like this about the game. And I mean, hey, if people do enjoy the game, that's fine. It's all subjective in the end. Though I personally have always seen Crash Bash as a pretty mediocre game. While the game had a couple of decent minigame concepts, the majority were just really boring and far too repetitive overall. Now I kind of understand, seeing as this is the only PS1 Crash game yet to be remade, that people want to see it brought back, or maybe even a new Crash party game inspired by Bash. But in all honesty, I don't see this as likely for one main reason. Party games are not really that viable in the current industry. We've unfortunately left the era of couch co-op where these kind of games thrived and were best suited to far behind. Nowadays, they're kinda seen as low effort and low quality titles to many. Even the big names like Mario Party, while still selling pretty well, did very on the reception front and sort of came and went, being forgotten as quickly as they came out. The point I'm making here is that there really isn't much of a market for these kind of games as there used to be, and I don't really think that Activision will see it as all that worth it to tackle that genre of game again. Sorry to say to the Bash fans, but this is one that I don't think should nor probably won't be getting the HD treatment anytime soon. The Wrath of Cortex is an odd case. I don't really think anyone would agree that it was the big next-gen step up for Crash Bandicoot that people had hoped it to be. Now true, it's not as despised as it used to be. People now seem to be sort of coming to an acceptance that the game was just meh. And yeah, that's where I stand. To me, The Wrath of Cortex is the definition of painfully average, both simultaneously playing it way too safe and being strange and alienating. It led to a fairly unfocused and strangely toned game that ultimately just felt like watered down DLC for Crash Warped. For everything that Wrath of Cortex did really well, such as great music, atmosphere, and decent platforming levels, it also did an equal amount wrong with a weird, ugly visual style, terrible boss fight, and a smattering of jumbled, crappy, and unwarranted vehicle levels. Except for the Atmosphere levels. I like the balls. So with this in mind, it doesn't seem like people are exactly clambering to revisit this one. And I don't really think that it would have been all that likely either. This was the last of the 3D warp room style games. And since you couldn't really warrant selling a remake of this on its own, I feel like if Wrath of Cortex were to have been remade, it would have been done so in the form of a big DLC for the N-tranced trilogy, albeit with a lot of tweaks and fixes. I think the community is quite settled on this one for the time being. We're all kind of content leaving it as its flawed, weird, okay self. Now, I'm gonna bundle the two GBA titles together due to how similar they are. Yes, I say two because the thought of bringing back Crash Purple or even Spyro Orange for that matter is comparable to unearthing a long-forgotten buried shit and attempting to freshen it up. It's deeply unpleasant, results in no benefits whatsoever, and no one fucking asked for it. So let's just focus on Crash Bandicoot XS, otherwise known as the Huge Adventure, and Crash Bandicoot N-tranced. Despite what some may think, there is a slight and interesting case to be made for going back to these titles, since despite being GBA games, for what they were, adapting and translating the gameplay of Crash Bandicoot into a portable, simpler 2D format, it turned out pretty decent all things considered and pulled off by Vicarious Visions no less. Now true, when compared to the main series, they may not seem as memorable, but it pulls off what it sets out to do very well. So the idea of maybe adapting these games into say the N-tranced trilogy style would be an interesting thought at the least. Now the reason why I don't see this happening is because, well, these are GBA games after all, and are definitely on the more obscure end of the spectrum in terms of the Crash franchise. It would be difficult to justify a demand for it, and ultimately, it's just not necessary. While it's a neat little thought to entertain, it's probably best left as it is, unappreciated gems in the series. Now, onto perhaps the most requested Crash remake of them all, Crash Twinsanity. It's quite obvious to understand why this is a big wish for many Crash fans. Twinsanity was a much more unique outing for Crash, keeping some core elements of the gameplay while following a different structure, more akin to something like Rayman 2. Basically, one long adventure through slightly more open but still linear areas. Add to that the amount of character and wit this game has, and you can see why it's considered by many to be the best post-Naughty Dog game, myself included. But the only thing more interesting than what Crash Twinsanity was, is what it could have been. It's well known by now that Twinsanity had a really strange, rocky, very rushed and very interesting development, where so many concepts and content ended up on the cutting room floor, and many fans have been keen to see what the game could have been like had it included said content. It's a very cool concept to think about, and hell, even Twinsanity's lead director has gone on record stating he would like to revisit it. Now, while even I think it would be really cool to see a director's cut of Twinsanity, so to speak, I still don't think it's all that likely. Again, this comes down to the fact whether Activision will see this as a financially viable project. And even with all the cut content, it would still be tough to justify selling at full retail price as a single game, which is likely how it would be sold, considering how different it is to other Crash games. You couldn't really bundle it with anything else. However, it is very evident that a remake of Twinsanity has the most passion over any other in the franchise, and I guess that says a lot about the game. Despite the fact that it had a very troubled rush development that does show in the game and still isn't liked by everyone, it still managed to achieve this cult classic status within the fanbase. And though it's not likely that we'll see anything about it again, it will still have a legacy within the franchise. Okay, so these next few I'm just gonna bung out quickly because I've not got much to say about them. Crash Nitro Kart, like no shit it's not gonna be remade. Pretty much the majority of the game is in nitro fueled and it's so much better there than it ever was in the original. Tag team racing kind of for the same reasons, though to a much lesser extent of course. I don't think the game was popular enough to justify redoing it as a whole, and I kind of see the inclusion of some of its content in nitro fueled as the main acknowledgement in this era. And to be honest, I'm hardly bothered since I'm not really the game's biggest fan to begin with. And Crash Boom Bang, Oh, don't make me fucking laugh. And to top this all off, Crash of the Titans and Mind Over Mutant once again clump together because of their identical styles. It's fair to say that the community have opinions regarding these two games. And yeah, understandably so, it completely changed Crash in gameplay, artistic style and tone, feeling very far from what the series was known for. Now, I personally can't really comment on Mind Over Mutant since I have yet to play it, though I have seen gameplay, but in regards to Crash of the Titans, I can only say what I have said several times already. It's a good game when you judge it as its own thing. It's just not good as a Crash game when you're meant to link it to a series known for this kind of gameplay. I can enjoy it as a separate okay thing, but when you slap Crash onto it, it really turns into a bastardization of the franchise. Regardless of my individual thoughts though, I think it's safe to say that neither the community nor Activision are really looking to revisit this part of Crash's history, especially considering that for the longest time, these games were considered the death of the franchise. Thankfully, the Bandicoot is back now and better than ever, so we can just relegate these two games to just an extremely weird corner of the franchise, that while a few will look on it fondly, most will likely be happy to forget it ever happened. Now, just to round this off, once again, I'm not saying that these games will ever be remade or remastered or whatever at some theoretical point in the future. We can never say never. We never know what's to come, so perhaps at some point this video may become redundant, but who knows. Now, if you were to ask me what I would say to the people who would still like to experience these other games, well, I would say it's probably for the best we leave them as they are. They can still be experienced perfectly fine as they are now, warts and all. And hey, with the next console generation seemingly having full backwards compatibility confirmed, that should make this even easier now. I think for now, it's in both the community's and Activision's best interest that the series move forward with new games. We remade the best of the series to create a solid and dependable foundation for which we can build a healthy and strong future for Crash Bandicoot on, leaving behind the more unusual titles, but never forgetting them and also learning from them, what they did both great and terrible for the franchise so that we can do better this time around. As John F. Kennedy once said, "Those who look only to the past or the present are certain to miss the future," and I think that's the perfect way to sum this all up. And so with that, thank you all so much for watching. Honestly, it really does mean a lot to me. Feel free to like and subscribe if you feel like it, and I'll see you all in the next video. Take care, guys.